Welcome, everybody. My name is Marlene Brill. I am one of the longtime board members. I won't tell you how long, and also a published author. And once we get started, you're going to hear more from Walter Podrazik. Did I get that right? And a little plug for our sponsor, which is Society of Midland Authors. And we're so glad that you've joined us today. And Midland Authors is a 12-state organization for authors. And if you're unfamiliar with us and want to learn more, go to midlandauthors.org and you can read all about us. It's a storied organization that goes back to 1915. So there's a lot of interesting stuff on our website. This is the first meeting we have in what we hope is a recurring series, a how-to series. And it grew out of the many questions that we get and continue to have about this crazy publishing business. And we hope to cover as many topics that new and seasoned authors want to know about. But you have to remember that each of these topics can be a whole session or a whole week on its own. So we're trying to give an overview and answer your questions and know that this is a program for you. So we want your input. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll be monitoring them. We've muted everybody for now until the end of the program, just to keep the dogs and babies quiet. And we'll have the formal question and answer period at the end. And let's see, when we can ask, you can ask particular panelists or whatever for their specific thing. But first, in the spirit of how crazy this business is, and it is a business, we will, and to reinforce the part that you're not crazy, whether you are a new author or an author who wants to republish again, I thought I would read to you from my Bible from When I Get Depressed. And that's a book called Rotten Rejections. I don't know if any of you are familiar with them. And there's a follow-up, Rotten Rejections and Reviews. And here's where you find out how famous people were rejected and how crazy the business can be. But I would just want to read one thing to start us off. There's a story in the trade that a publisher once accepted a book and sent it to an artist for illustrations. When the artist had finished, he sent the manuscript back and it was returned to him with a rejection slip. So there's often no rhyme or reason why something gets rejected. And we're going to hear a little bit about that and how maybe you won't get rejected. So I'm going to ask our panelists to just tell us a little bit about yourselves so you know who you're dealing with and who you can ask questions. So why don't we start with Sylvia? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, sure. I'm Sylvia Frank Rodrigue, and I'm so happy to be with you today. I started in book publishing as an editorial intern at Stackpole Books in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. When I graduated from college, they hired me, and I was able to work on all different types of subject areas, from magic to furniture making to the Civil War. From there, I moved to Baton Rouge and acquired books for Louisiana State University Press, primarily history books, but I also worked on political science and poetry. I became editor-in-chief there. Next, I started working long distance as an independent contractor for Southern Illinois University Press, where I acquire history books. And I more recently started acquiring their criminology books as well. So working at smaller publishers has given me the opportunity to become acquainted with all aspects of publishing. And I get to pitch in when I'm needed as well. I've co-authored 2 history books on Baton Rouge, one with Arcadia, now the History Press, and the other was a coffee table book commissioned by the State Historical Society in Louisiana. I've done freelance copy editing, fiction, but mostly nonfiction, mostly history books. and this will sound very strange, but I enjoy putting endnotes and bibliographies into Chicago style.
Oh, wow. Okay. You've got quite a lot of experience. Donna, how about you tell us about yourself quickly?
Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Beasley. I am the publisher for Kazoom Kids Books. We specialize in children's picture books for children ages 5 to 7 in the multicultural market, predominantly African American and Latino books. I have been a publisher for about 5 years. I'm also an author. I write children's books. And I have a nonfiction book I've written called Spark Magic, How to Write a Multicultural Children's Picture Book. And I am a proponent for all kinds of publishing. So I'm a traditional publisher, but I have been a hybrid author and I've also been a self-publisher. So I love every aspect of publishing and happy to be here to discuss the various options today.
Great. Lots of experience here. Sharon, tell us about yourself.
I'm Sharon Woodhouse, and I started in publishing not knowing anything. I had a philosophy degree and needed to make money, which for some reason I thought publishing might be it. So for 25 years, I was a traditional independent publisher. I owned Lake Claremont Press and then Everything Goes Media. We published over 100 books. And from there, I went on to kind of overlapping with that 25 years, I started Conspire Creative, which is now my full-time project. And I'm calling it an agency because we do all sorts of things. And that is project management. We help people with self-publishing, author coaching, author management, consulting. And that's for anyone in the small press or any author or small press we help with those things. I write a lot on Substack and Medium about building income generating holistic author businesses. That's my specialty, encouraging authors to take an entrepreneurial approach to their books. And we have services like email advice on demand, 1 hour calls with publishing pros, so people can talk to people with different publishing specialties and get all their questions answered in a short amount of time. So I don't like to specialize. And like Donna, I'm a proponent of all sorts of publishing. And I know authors who have publishers and various in the same thing, some traditional, some, okay, that's all.
Okay, Wally, why don't you take it away?
Well, okay, and thank you again for those the sketches of your background, which I know just scratches the surface of your experiences in publishing. Let's start at ground zero and then work our way to more complex questions. If someone has never had a book published but wants to get a book published and would contact any of the three of you, what would you want to see? What would you want to hear? How do you begin the dialogue? If you're the author, again, never published author, how do you begin that dialogue? How do you open that door for the first time? And I could ask someone directly, or you could jump in. Sylvia, do you want to go first, or?
Sure. Over the years, I've spoken to authors who are hesitant to approach publishers, and I just want to assure you that publishers need authors, and we want to hear from you. So what I'm looking for is what your topic is. Is this a right fit for Southern Illinois University Press? I want to know the summary of your project, your manuscript. Give me the argument. Talk to me a little bit about the sources you've used, your promotional plans, your word count, illustrations. What if the manuscript is complete now, or if not, when it will be complete? Those are the basics.
Donna, what about you? Do you have certain benchmarks people have to meet to hear back from you? How does that work for you?
Well, obviously, the subject matter has to be something that's of interest to our publishing press, but also I'm looking for right now, for example, this year, I'm actually looking for people who have created a book that has more than, where a character can be developed into more than just maybe a book. You know, in the children's business, you know, you can expand that into, you know, videos and toys, clothes, etc. So I'm looking for something, you know, kind of that has that potential. And then the other thing I'm looking for is middle grade, because we're actually doing the middle grade line starting this year. And so, you know, we're basically, you would send a inquiry, send an email to us, and with the outline of what it is that you want to do. And if we're interested, we'll go to step 2, and, you know, where you can send in your manuscript. But it's not a complicated process. As Sylvia says, you know, we do want to hear from you.
Sharon, you put your you are a author promoter, and how does someone find the people like Sylvia, like Donna, like yourself? I'm the author. Here's a blank slate. Where do I look for this? Do I just start typing in topics and see who publishes that already? How does that work?
I think there's several good ways to find publishers, and sometimes you might need to approach more publishers than you can imagine. And that, depending on your the stomach you have for it, that might mean 100 publishers. And there are that many publishers out there, and then some. So I would go to a big bookstore and see who's publishing stuff like what you have in mind. I would go to Amazon and see who's publishing stuff like what you have in mind. And I would create sort of a priority list. There's also the book literary marketplace in all public libraries. You can go to the reference section and see that. You can get a membership to literary marketplace online. I believe it's 20. You can get a year membership for something like $500, or a 10-day membership perhaps for $25. I don't know the prices anymore, but those directories like that list many, many, many publishers.
And I think you both Donna and Sylvia mentioned this is what we publish. So it seems what you've just mentioned, Sharon, is a very important first step. You're not going to pitch a children's book to Sylvia, and you're not necessarily going to pitch a particular type of history book to Donna unless they see and you see that there's an opening there. So what you just described, Sharon, would Donna and Sylvia, would you agree that that's at least step 1 to trying to identify a potential publisher?
Yeah, actually, yeah, you definitely want to start with, you know, what it is that you're writing, that, you know, you want to know the right age group, you want to know the right, you know, audience for it. And you know, because it's very important when your publishers are still in the business of sales. So, you know, we've got to sell the book that you create. And, you know, so we've got to have a market for it. And, you know, you'd be surprised at how many authors tell me that, you know, things like, you know, anybody can buy my book, or it's, you know, it's available to everyone, and I don't want to be pigeonholed in any particular age group or any particular genre. Well, you know, from my point of view, then you're not really interested in selling your work, because what, you know, as an industry, we are an industry of genres and age groups and target markets, and so you've got to think about who the book is for. You know, who is it going to appeal to? Who can you sell it to? Are there associations or you know, my very first book I wrote was called Family Pride, The Complete Guide to Tracing African American Genealogy, and it was published by Macmillan Press. And at the time, this was not a book, this was not a topic that had been written about before. And they didn't know a thing about how to get to the market, you know, and even though they were a big publishing company out of New York. And so, but my background has always been in Black consumer marketing. You know, that was the industry I came up in. So I was able to guide them on how they would reach that audience, how they would reach that target for that book. And that led to that book being picked up by an actual the Illinois Travel Association, which happened to be doing promoting family reunions and getting togethers. So I'm just saying that you got to think through who the market is, who you're going to sell it to, who did you write it for, who do you thought would have the greatest appeal, and if you want the book to be sold, because some people write books, they don't necessarily want to please anybody but their family or themselves or their industry. So Walter, I would just say that it is a first step. Who's it for, what the age group is, what the target is. Are there any, if you're selling a book on zoos, or how many zoos are there in the country? If you're selling a book on ships or aviation or whatever it might be, that's a good one. Timing. I think it's April, that's poetry month. If you're doing a poetry book, why not bring it out in time to take advantage of that? Those kinds of things that you might want to think about.
And the idea of understanding marketing, I think all of you have either explicitly or implied, you've got to be able to tell me who's going to buy this. If you want us to buy it, the publisher, well, then surely you have to have at least given it some thought. And the detail of thought, I'm really interested in each of you to talk a little bit about, do you expect someone to come in with full marketing research? Maybe we're targeting these states. Here's a list of, you mentioned genealogy. Here's a list of genealogical organizations. Maybe that's who we pitch it to. So is that something that you would like to see from a potential author, besides whether they can string two sentences together?
Yeah, if I could jump in.
Yeah.
It's very helpful to know that an author is aware of who the reader is that they're trying to reach. And some of that is from marketing plans, but I don't expect anything detailed at query or proposal stage. I like to have an idea that the author is aware that certain people are going to look for certain books. When I hear this is for the general public, I know that is an author who hasn't really thought through who the actual reader is. And I did want to mention really quickly for university presses, if you go to the Association of University Press website and click on the resources tab, there is a subject area guide for university press publishers. And so you can look to see all the presses that publish, say, anthropology or political science. So if you approach a press that has a list in your subject area, you're more likely to get a yes. And I'll drop the link in the chat.
Well, thank you.
I would like to just add to that, you could do a lot of research on Amazon. What's the best, who are the best sellers? Who are the top 100 books? Who is that audience? Does your book fit in with one of those? What books are like mine, and who publishes those? I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do research that's no cost, that can give you a good idea of who is publishing these kinds of books.
And Amazon is helpful enough to say, and here's the rankings of what's been selling for us. So at least they get you started. Sylvia just posted a link for the university presses there. Oh, I see there's a question. We've been talking about particular types of books, mostly nonfiction. And the question comes in from Robert. If you're writing a novel, should you find your own editor before submitting it, or will a publisher assign one? I'll just leave the question exactly as stated. If you're writing a novel, basically, do you finish it and then take it over? Do you find someone to work with you and then take it over, or what? How would any of you handle a novel, a fiction?
I would say in most cases, an author has to turn in a book that they think is finished. And that typically means hiring your own editor. And the publisher will also hire their own editor, but you should not have this idea that you're going to get the editor that's going to hold your hand and fix your manuscript and bring you along and nurture you. That doesn't exist. So I would say you want to submit a book that you think is finished and is your best product.
I totally agree. As an author, I always hire my own editor first. I want to send a good product when I'm sending out a book to a publisher.
Yes, I agree too. Absolutely. If an author, I don't want to see a first draft, basically, as an acquisitions editor.
I think that's a really good way of saying it. I don't want to see a first draft.
Yeah,
It might be a wonderful idea, but somehow it has to have been vetted, just from basic grammar and storytelling, whether the storytelling is nonfiction, fiction, or what have you. It's just like, does someone understand what I'm saying? How, when you talk about wanting to see something either edited or just well thought through, do you look for things like layout, for instance, or are we still in the here's my not double space typewritten submission, but here's text? Donna, you had mentioned being very expansive in the types of ways a story or a book or a project can be presented. So,
But not a novel. I want my
but
novel
not
double spaced on 8.5 by 11 paper.
Okay.
If you
okay.
submit the novel, I want yeah, I don't want it any other way.
You don't want you don't want a movie script with storyboards, etc., that have
No,
been presented.
no.
No. Can you tell a compelling story? If you're trying to help someone submit it like a sample chapter or a sample of their work, if it's not finished yet, it's like, I've got this, and here's a sample of what I will do if it looks like it might be a possible match for you. Do you ever consider something that's not totally written yet? That is, it might have a strong sample chapter, an outline, etc., but the actual, we put heart and soul into this one chapter. That's where the heart and soul went. They haven't tried to fill the entire book yet. Do you look at something like that, or does it need more?
I don't. You have to have a finished book.
I
Okay.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. We will look at proposals and sample chapters, and we will actually do peer review of detailed proposals and 2 sample chapters. And if you want me to talk about peer review, I'm happy
Yeah,
to.
actually, well, why don't you do that for a moment? Because you specifically cited university presses. And so it's not just convincing an editor or potential publisher. There are actually other stages, especially if it's a creditable book. But does it go to the next stage? So tell us a little bit, what is peer review? How does that work? What obligations does that bring to a potential author?
It brings a lot of obligations to a potential author. Peer review is, in short, it's an anonymous reviewer who is an expert in the same subject area as your manuscript. SIU Press requires 2 positive peer reviews before an editor can take the project to the press's editorial board. The university editorial board is the group that votes on whether or not to offer an advance contract for a proposal or a full contract for a finished manuscript. So much of my work is shepherding manuscripts through the peer review process. And so I find the peer reviewers, I have somebody send out the manuscripts for me, and then I convey those reports to the authors. The peer reviewers are looking at subject matter, whether the argument is new or interesting, how it speaks to the field, and accuracy. They don't do fact checking, but they will point out if there are issues, things like that. It points out strengths and weaknesses before publication, which is one of the wonderful things about university presses, that we have this extra step. So you know that when the book is published, it's already been vetted by experts in the field.
A question. Sorry, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, as an independent press, we move, at least where we move faster, in that, we don't really want to wait around for you to finish a novel that you may never finish because you know how authors are. So that's why we don't actually, you got to have it past the first draft for us to take a look at it, because once we do and we look at it and approve, send it to our editors, and, everything moves really fast. And so that's why we don't really do, first 10 chapters or whatever, which is the way, as an author, I sometimes submit to edit to the agents. They want to see the first 10 chapters, so that's not a common, that's common for agents, but for me, you need to have at least past the first draft.
Again, going into the chat room, they do. Sylvia's already answered this partially, but I still put the question out to everyone. Do you work with agents, or is the majority of what you consider submitted directly from the authors? So is there a role for agents these days?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of presses that only work with agent and authors. And when I'm working with authors who are finishing a manuscript, one of the things I often help people with are these milestones: finding an agent, finding a publisher, and also deciding, when am I going to move from finding an agent and trying to get perhaps a big New York publishing contract to moving on to finding a publisher that doesn't require an agent, a university press, an indie press, or just even a small mid-sized company.
We work with a lot of first-time authors and illustrators because we're in a niche, and we're looking for two things. We're looking to help people break into an industry that's usually closed to many minority illustrators and authors. So we're looking to help more to get into the industry, but we're also looking for new talent all the time. People who particularly artists, illustrators, that can do really great books, and as writers as well. So but we do work with we do work with agents, but we work with, probably, I would say we're more 80% unagented than we are, and only 20% of our books might be from an agent.
Okay. I said we are going to start with the I've never had anything published. Now let's go. You've had that book. You've had your first book, maybe even two books out. Does that change how you, as acquisition people, look at a submission? That is, now it's no longer, will this person be able to turn out anything, to this is something that the person has produced. What sorts of questions would you put to a prospective book title from a already published one or more times? Do you still need as much detail from them? Do you need a different kind of detail? And I'm thinking, Donna, of you having not only multicultural, but it sounds like you must have strong illustrations as well as strong text that go into your publications. So do you have like a core group that you say, boy, I can't wait to see what that person has on their minds now?
I do have like core illustrators that I use, but illustrators are usually chosen by the type of book that you want to produce.
Okay.
You want to fit the illustrator and the author together. You want they may never actually meet, but you
Okay.
want the feel of what the author is trying to convey. You want to pick an illustrator that can deliver on that. So, but I don't think, like I said, we use a lot of first timers. So we're kind of different in that regard to most publishing companies, because it's harder to find quality books in my category than it is in some of the other categories, like a university press, for example, might be using, in the case, Sylvia.
Sylvia, how about you for second book, third book? How does that possibly what is that process any different for you in that regard?
It can be. If it's an author I've worked with before, I know the author well. I know how the book is sold. I know how active the author is in promoting the book. So I have a lot of interesting background that kind of goes into the decision making on a second or third project. Also, of course, if that second or third project is still a good fit for our press. If an author is published with another publisher and is, done 2 or 3 books with another press, I'm always curious why they're targeting our press. Did that other publisher turn down this project, and is that why they're approaching us? It's just something I'm curious about. But I think it's if an author has been through the peer review process at another publisher, it makes it simpler because they know what to expect. If they haven't, it's kind of like starting with a first-time author.
Mm-hmm.
You have to explain because it is very different from trade publishing.
Oh, appreciated. I saw a question in the chat. I am not the world's best marketer. In fact, I am probably in the bottom 5%. My previous books have had somewhat disappointing sales. How do you, as potential acquisition editors, look at an author like that? What assistance could you give them in marketing, in guidance? In other words, you might look at the book, I'll expand on it. You might look at the book and say, well, that looks like it's pretty good. It didn't quite reach its potential. Is that something that your guidance could help either that one or most probably the next one do better? Do you do investigation as to why do you think it didn't work? Pointing that to you, Sylvia, for the start.
Right, thank you. Interesting questions. Since I mainly work with acquisitions, I'm not as skilled with marketing. I don't have the same experience. What I would do is recommend that an author hire somebody who does, contact Sharon, contact somebody who's a book publicist, and connect yourself with the people who do know how to market books and will help you do that.
Yep, and I think, we do a launch of a book to get it off and get it going and send it on its way, so to speak. But the life of a book is more than just the 2 months that the publishing company might be promoting the book. And that's where Sharon's, and you might want to talk to them about this, Sharon, which come in terms of what working with authors and what, can be helpful as they go forward, because a lot of authors don't realize, or maybe you do realize that, marketing is part of the author's responsibility as well.
Yeah.
Because it is not, the publisher is only going to go so far, then they're going to move on to the next book and the next author. So, if you want your book to, you might have to do your own marketing or hire someone to do your marketing, or, because it's an important aspect of publishing. It's almost as important as, writing the book. Is getting it out and getting it out into the world and letting the world know that it exists. So, and no, everybody can't be a good marketer. So it is important that you might find someone that you can work with that can help you in that area. I think the real challenge when you're doing your first book is finding somebody that's affordable. That's one of the things that, because, publicity can get pretty expensive. So you might want to start with, someone doing social media or, but you do have to kind of get in there and do the work to keep it going.
Yeah, I would say that no author should expect the publisher to do the marketing they want them to. It just doesn't work like that. The publisher's job is to keep their company in business. It's not to help necessarily any specific author or any specific book. Marketing the book is truly the author's job, and the publisher will do what they do. They have the distribution network, they have their typical formula, everyone has their own plan, but it is the author's job. And I would even say is that most people shouldn't be hiring marketers or publicists for their books, because they will never ever make back that money. They should learn, they can learn, they can take classes, they can buy books, they can read, they can hire author coaches, anyone who can help them with marketing. But that's really helping you become a marketer and what's helping you find the route that's going to work for you and your books. Because as we all know, these, a book costs $15 to $20. You start slicing that up and giving everyone's piece away. And your piece is $1.50 as an author, or maybe $6 if you sell them yourself at an event. Do the math. You're not hiring a professional to do anything for you for very long with those numbers. So you do have to learn on your own and just keep getting better at it. It's a long, an author career is a long-term plan. But it's possible. I want to say it's possible, but you have to learn. You have to make the commitment to learn it and do it yourself.
And I could tell you when I first started, and even now, even to this day, I use a lot of interns. When I started my company, I couldn't afford employees, and I would look. Every semester, I had 2 interns that did, various things, whatever I needed that semester. Sometimes it was social media, sometimes it was accounting, sometimes it was animation, but there's a school, no matter what it is, there's a school that has interns that can do it and who love to do it, and they're affordable and excited to do it. And I always try to make sure that my interns have something at the end they can put into their portfolio that said that they did this. So that, marketing is a department at many colleges. So don't hesitate to think about hiring an intern. I've been using them for years. They work great.
Yeah,
oops. I was just going to say, and Dewey, I'm going to get that and put it in the chat. But they do micro interns. You can have an intern for 2 weeks. They do. I'll find their link and put it in the thing. But they do interns for a project or a short time period. So you can do longer ones too. But if you only need somebody to promote your book for 3 weeks, you can hire one of the micro interns also.
Yeah, another way to think about that is hiring a more affordable virtual assistant and giving them a project. So you might want to be on podcasts. You can have your virtual assistant come up with 100 contacts for podcasts, and then you're the one that's going out and doing the pitches yourself. But someone has done the background work for you, and that is another affordable way to approach marketing.
On that podcast collaboration is also a good way to get into an association to kind of do marketing doing podcasts. That could also work for you as well.
And what you both have been saying suggests that this is not geographically limited. In other words, the internet allows you to have these micro internships or these podcasts. No matter where you're located, you may be able to connect with someone else in another locale, certainly for things like social media and such, because that's not tethered to an office. Oh, I see. Okay, interns for, thank you, Donna. I think both Donna and Sharon have mentioned, perhaps obliquely, self-publishing. So some projects lend themselves to you getting it totally covered or maybe 90% covered before you walk through the door. Because Donna, you said you don't want to see a first draft, but if somebody comes in and said, how about this? And they have their vision of how it's executed. Would you want to see that? Or is that something they should just kind of focus on their own printing, distribution, etc.?
Well, I'm a big fan of self-publishing. I have to tell you. So despite being an independent publisher, I love the control of having your book from start to finish and, doing all aspects of it. I know that's not for everybody. It's kind of my thing, but there's the beauty of self-publishing is that you can get your work out into the world, even if no publisher wants to take it, right? You can hire your editor, you can do your best work, you can create your creative product, whether you're a painter or a writer. It's still up to you to get your work out into the world. And sometimes you just can't land that publishing contract, no matter what you do, no matter, even if you send it out to 100 publishers. Maybe, no one likes it, or maybe it's not that, it's just not a fit, for what it is that they want to do at this time. And that's where self-publishing can come in, because the way that the industry is now, that you can do it all of these ways. You can still, create your manuscript and get it up on Amazon, and you can sell it. You do print on demand, and you can sell it at pop-ups and workshops, and your local library. I mean, you can do things to get it out there, to get your writing career started, even if the traditional publishers are not open to your work. And it's harder to get, I think, there's so many books or writers that are submitting things these days that sometimes it's harder to get your stuff to break through. So I always encourage people, if you've given it your all to try to get a publisher, and that has not worked out for you, then please consider self-publishing. Don't just let the manuscript sit in your drawer for years. Consider getting it out there. It can be done, as a self-published book, and they're very popular. I mean, it's not like there's, used to be a stigma around it, but that's no longer exists. You got famous authors publishing books that they can't sell to maybe a major publisher because maybe it's a short book. I've noticed a lot of my favorite authors have done some short books that they put up on Amazon. So, you're in good company if you want to take that route.
And it strikes me that another benefit of that is you don't have as small a window to, well, we released it in September. If it hasn't made its mark by November, the publisher's gone on to other things.
Right.
But you actually may say, no, I'm here for years, not months. I'm committed to this project. It started, it got an okay start, and I'm going to keep working it in different ways. Going back to what Sharon was saying of being your own nonstop self-promoter too.
And then self-publishing book, particularly in the nonfiction arena, if you're looking to do, I have a nonfiction book, and one of the reasons I wrote that book was to enhance my reputation as a authority on multicultural children's books, right? And so, if you look at doing a book, why are you writing this book? What is it that you hope to accomplish? So maybe you're not necessarily writing it to make a lot of sales. Maybe you're looking at it to enhance your, you as the authority in some area. I would think that at university presses that kind of would be a common thing. I'm not sure. But, it's definitely in the, the training and the arena, there's a lot of self-publishers who publish these books to build their reputation as a trainer, as a professional, as an expert in whatever industry, they want to be known for.
Another word for self-publishing, writes someone in the chat, is independent publishing. It has a nicer ring to it. And actually, as an example, one associate of mine started with, well, this is so specialized, I'm going to do it myself from beginning to end, artwork, printing in overseas and whatever. And now I would say he would be accurately described as an independent publisher because it didn't stop with that one book. Having seen how to do it, it's possible to replicate that, and you've learned all the good and bad parts of the process.
Also say that self-publishers have adopted the independent publishing for themselves, but in the business, almost anyone outside of New York is considered an independent publisher. If you're not part of a larger conglomerate, you're independent. So there's two senses in which that term is used now pretty equally.
And both equally valid. Okay.
I'd like to
Um,
just jump in
yeah, go
and
ahead.
talk about
Yeah.
establishing authority for an author. And, you're absolutely right, Donna, because many of the books that we publish at university presses are books that are published primarily to procure something for the author, whether it's tenure or promotion at a university. They often have to have a book out in order to jump to the next level, and but a lot of times the authors are working on a manuscript for years and years because they love the topic so much, and for them it's almost that the writing could be more fulfilling than the marketing of it, and just having it out in the world is satisfying. Not everybody, but there are some authors who simply find it satisfying just to have the manuscript out in the world, and that might be also a good self-publishing, way to go to self-publishing for that.
Because it seems that there's different sides of the brain that you're using to promote and to write. That is, even if you are actively and aggressively into promoting, you've got to kind of get in that mood and start making these calls and start writing these press releases and start posting these social media posts, which is very different from the discipline, especially Sylvia, for your type of academic press, to have all the verifications and the citations and be able to pass peer review and all. You've got to really immerse yourself in it. How does the electronic publishing fit into all of your plans? That is, ebooks, are they an important element? We don't do them, we do only them. How does that work? I'll ask each of you, how does that work these days for you?
I actually started as an electronic publisher.
Okay.
When I first started, I started my children's books. They had sight, sound, motion, and animation. And, I started that way, trying to be different and set myself apart from other publishers. But, it was challenging to do it that way. And when the pandemic hit, it just was not profitable at all. And I had to really switch to becoming a traditional print publisher. But we still do our books as ebooks as well. But we no longer do them with sight, sound, and motion. But that's something we're looking to, we're actually looking to maybe take those to doing some things on YouTube, because we do have we have all that. We have the sight, the sound, the motion, and and the animation. So it could be something that we're looking to do. But so needless to say that that obviously we're actively in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are as well. We have been doing ebooks in addition to our print books for at least a decade. All of our books are done as ebooks, and we are starting to look into audiobooks. We have done a few. We're trying to do more of those, finding the right audiobook producers to work with. We're also doing something different that's called open access, which a lot of university presses have been starting to do. Open access means we put the entire book up online for free. Anybody can access it. We just released 6 of Michael Burlingame's edited volumes. They've been in print, I want to say 20 years, 25 years. And they've been selling steadily in paperback. As a university press, part of our mission is to disseminate knowledge and information. And one of the best ways to do that now is using the internet to make this kind of information available online. Other university presses are experimenting in different ways with open access. But if you do look around, you'll find that a lot of University Press books are online for free. And you can buy print copies of them.
So may I ask the obvious author question, what's in it for me if the book is free?
It's reaching a larger audience.
It's still not paying anything.
It's not paying you. No, it isn't. It is more for the benefit of scholarship and reaching as many people as you can with your fascinating ideas and research.
And that may-
Sylvia, oh,
Go
the
ahead.
books that are, the books, the ebooks that are free, is that content also sold by SIU Press to like the digital content portals? So like people, you're like EBSCO and ProQuest, and is that a way authors might make money on the digital content
Yes.
with you?
Yeah, there's a pilot program that one of my colleagues has been working on, where we have 3 years to sell the book through ProQuest and EBSCO, et cetera, and then it will go through open access after that. So that's a pilot program. Like I said, this is all really in its infancy, open access publishing, though Amherst College Press does all of its books open access, for example.
There's a suggestion that Sharon tell the story of how she marketed a Lake Claremont book to a jewelry store and sold many copies. Could you expand on that? If that rings a bell, Sharon?
Yeah, that's Chris Lynch, I'm guessing. We sold his book on Midway Airport at a jewelry store across from Midway Airport, where pilots would stop in to get their watches adjusted. And she sold hundreds of our books over several years there. And she moved on from just selling the airport book to other books because people liked getting books before they went to the airport once they got used to it. So that was just part of our philosophy of just constantly looking for new places to sell books. And I think, you know, some books do sell really well online. They sell well through digital funnels, through Amazon, through ebook coupons and book, you know, through all of the online methods, but not all books. There are still lots of books that sell well through personal outreach. And I think for most people, this is still the way that you are going to get the exposure you want, the expanded life and experience of writing a book that you're looking for. And that is outreach to bookstores, to libraries, to gift shops, when you're on vacation. I mean, it really depends, to conventions, just person to person reaching out, going into brick and mortar stores, things like that. That is how the best advice that I ever heard when I was a brand new publisher, when I started, it was the 90s. There was a pub forum with 800 publishers on there of all sizes. And there was a guy on there, John Kramer, who wrote a book, 1001 Ways to Market Your Books. And he said 5 things a day, every day. And I have not heard a better thing for any author than do at least 5 things a day to promote your book. Because what happens is over time, the momentum builds. You start getting rid of the things that don't work in favor of the things that do work. And you never forget that that's your job if you want to make a living from your book, say, or if you want to develop a career over time. And so we followed that as publishers. We encouraged it in our authors. I do it now through author coaching and consulting. You really just need to constantly reach out. And it can be the same stuff. You might just be someone who likes podcasts or writing columns, or you might like variety. You might like doing events. You might like doing special events. You might want to try all the things because you like trying all the things, but you have to do something. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen without you doing the things.
Personally, the associate, given a choice between going to like a Barnes and Noble, wow, a major store, which sells to everybody, and going to a convention of people that are interested in your topic, guess which way you're going to sell more copies of your book. because you go to your target audience, basically. A
Sharon, I
question-
just wanted to say, I heard Jack Canfield one time talk about how they sold Chicken Soup for the Soul. And he did, pretty much just that, 5 times a day. And he probably was reading John Kramer's book too, because he was the guru back in those days.
Yeah.
And but that's exactly how they built Chicken Soup for the Soul. They did, did outreach every day for, I think over a year. And
Yeah, I heard that story
eventually
too.
it
Yeah.
snowballed on.
And no matter how many times I repeat that, I don't think that many people believe it or follow it. Personally, of all the hundreds or thousands of people even that I have repeated that to over the years.
Yeah, you made it, made me think about it. I don't think I've been following that like I should. So I'm gonna pump it up this year.
But you believe it, right?
I do believe it,
yeah.
absolutely.
I know Marlene online was answering this question, but since we have academic publisher, do you typically need a PhD or other terminal degree to get published by an academic press? So that would be, I guess, mostly to Sylvia.
Yeah, not necessarily. We publish a lot of authors who do not have a PhD degree. We publish a lot who do. I would probably, it's maybe a 70-30 split. But we do publish authors who do not have that. And we also publish authors who have terminal degrees, PhDs, who are not in the teaching profession.
Mm-hmm.
Or who might not be in universities, might be teaching at high school level. Yeah, all sorts of different types of authors. And a lot of university presses, you will find published poets as well. SA Press has a long series of poetry that we've done in conjunction with the English department at SIU.
Well, I just noticed we only have a couple of minutes left, so I want to make sure we don't lose the thank you very much for agreeing to share your wisdom, insight, and advice. Time for a couple more questions, but no, actually time for each of you to have sort of closing remarks. I know that you've been given some pretty solid advice. Do 5 things each day. So let's distill this down to don't give us 5, give us 1 or 2 that would make your life as an acquisitions editor better because an author knew to do this. Ooh, that's a tough one, maybe.
Well, my 2 things, obviously pick publishers that actually publish the kinds of work that you do. Do your homework and find that out. Second, submit. Don't talk about submit, do submit. And, even if that's up to, as Sharon says, 100 publishers, keep track of who you submitted it to, when you submitted it, and, and follow up if you haven't heard from them in 6 weeks or whatever. So that would be my 2 things.
Sylvia or Sharon?
Sure. I do want to echo that you should absolutely follow what Donna's saying. And I would love it if authors read the publisher's instructions on how to format their manuscripts and how to submit their manuscripts. All publishers have this online, do the research and it'll be there for you. That's a big thing. And if you know of an author working on a topic, tell them about the publisher you've worked with or send them to the editor. We love to get referrals that way.
So referrals are good.
Very good.
Sharon?
Yeah, the 2 things that come to mind from when I published books, and we would publish 6 to 8 books a year and get 500 proposals a year. And the things I would say is a lot of people, if they had written books before, or if they were brand new, they wanted to do as little work as possible before and that's just a bad example. I mean, no one wants to work with someone who wants to do as little work as possible, especially if they don't want to write a proposal and they're a writer. So I would say put as much effort into writing your proposal as possible, because that is, and sort of treat it like a business plan. It's like a small business going to a bank for a loan. You're trying to get someone to go into business with you with your proposal. And I would come as an equal partner. So don't just, I mean, it's tempting because there's an imbalance of power to treat, to just be so grateful for the publisher, but I would come in as an author, knowing what you have, and especially if you have something good and operating from a place of strength and looking for the right publisher for you. And that is how you're going to really maximize the relationship and what you get out of the whole experience.
Well, thank you. Marlene, would you like to wrap us up? You introed everybody. Would you like to outro us all?
I have something from Rotten Rejections that was kind of alluded to before. Sometimes it seems to writers that the number of possible rejections of a would-be book is limited only by the number of publishers, says the Guinness Book of World Records. The greatest number of publishers' rejections for a manuscript is 106 for World Government Crusade by Gilbert Young, which I'm not familiar with, but what you had mentioned earlier, 100 isn't that big a deal. I think my top was about 43 rejections, and then it got made into a book, and it was like one of my favorites. It still is. So you never know. You got to have patience and persistence. And I think this has been a really informative meeting, and I want to thank Sharon and Sylvia and Donna and also Wally for his excellent moderation.
And thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
And so we of the Midland Authors appreciate you coming to this event.